I welcome you all to this session on web development with Next.js. We will be majorly focusing on understanding the web architecture and all the things that is supposed to happen, and majorly seeing how we can secure our applications more and more. And then I'll be walking you through a PowerPoint, and then I'll be talking. So let me just quickly go to my presentation. Mm, yeah, so here we go, and wait, I think my whole screen is getting shared. So let me just share the presentation for some time, and then yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'll start with as I told the agenda, we will be building end-to-end, we will be looking how to build end-to-end application and secure web applications using Next.js. And then for this purpose, how we can leverage Firebase for this, and how it will optimize and help us to make things quicker. Although we will be trying to understand the concepts also, like how it is happening, and take it as a fun session. Just try to get something out of it. And in case you face any issues or any doubts, feel free to ping in the chat box, and I'll be responding. Okay. So let's move next. And this is just a bit introduction about me. So I've been building JavaScript applications. So majorly I'm into MERN stack development, and I've been working, building applications such as content management systems, social media platforms, and then e-commerce applications and all those kind of things. So that is majorly what I've been doing for last 3 years, I would say. And then I also have experience in robotics and IoT. So I've built, robots and all those things. And let me just quickly, you can actually find all my portfolio and everything in this web link that I'm sharing with. And I can actually show you just a quick walkthrough of that. I have some projects mentioned there. So I'll, just quickly share that. So here, this is basically I've been working for as a software engineer as a full time, and I've been building some of these projects like microcontrollers, IoT devices, weather stations, and all those things. And then these are, as I told you, I'm into merge stack, blockchain, robotics, and computer vision is one of my interests. So making applications, like using image processing, doing all those facial detection, recognition, and all that. And then you can find all the projects that I have been working on, about them in here. These are some of the major projects, but there are other things also. So yeah, that's pretty much about me. That's a high-level introduction that I wanted to give you. And now let's get back to our presentation. So our main agenda. So let me just quickly share it back. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks for the compliments. Yeah. So I'm also interested into open source and Web3. So Web3 basically because it takes away that monarchical approach of basically taking control over data. Let's say if I tweet something and Twitter does not like it, they can just suspend my account and all those kind of stuff. Web3 takes away all those things. Apart from that, also you don't have different identity management. Everything is decentralized and runs on these smart contracts, which is kind of intriguing to me. So let's say I go to a apartment, and then when I come, I just ask them, okay, this is all. Basically, they want my ID proof to let me rent that for some time, and then you have to share all your data, and which is kind of I won't say a very much of breach of privacy because it happens in some contracts, but again it is basically sharing your data directly, and that is why those kind of things are totally eliminated. The way Web3 works, the smart contract, it will be just a program that will verify specific details for you, and then accordingly it will approve and allocate. So nothing is happening, as a third person or any contractor. So that makes it really interesting. And there are multiple other applications as well. But anyways, let's come to our use case. So this is just a prerequisite. Even though you don't know it, just feel free to add your pointers in the chat, so that in case if you are stuck anywhere, I would love to help. And although if it would have been a big kind of session, then I would have actually told you to code along with me. But since it is limited and we need to grasp a lot of things, so I would say, just walk with me and see how things are happening and try to understand that what is the principle, what is the core concept behind it. And anyway, I will be sharing this GitHub repo so that you could refer it anytime you want to. And so that we could just flow with the entire thing and get a better understanding of all that. So that would be my suggestion for this kind of specific workshop. In case if we had some kind of course, long course, in that case it is better to code along so that you learn on the go. But this is just to give you an overview and understanding of how the web is working, how the front end works, how the back end works, how you introduce something like authentication and all those kind of stuff. Okay, so that is so yeah. Coming back to prerequisites, basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is something that I'm expecting from you, because covering that would be itself a big topic. But even if you get stuck somewhere, like you don't understand what this HTML statement means or what is this CSS about and all that, just let me know. And then understanding of React functional components. So because Next.js is totally based on React as a development environment. So just basically understanding functional components, which are, I would say, which are pretty easier abstraction of the class-based components that used to exist long back. Although you can use it still now, but now with the function and hooks, it makes life much easier. So you should be having a basic understanding of those. And again, if anyway you get stuck, let me know. We will walk through that as well. Then there is this thing called TypeScript. I'm not sure how many of you actually use it. I feel that TypeScript is kind of a perfect language because it lets you do a lot of things. I mean, JavaScript is something everyone loves, but when it comes to make scalable applications, when your requirements burst out and when you have a lot of things to do, you will end up doing some errors, like you miss out type safety, you miss out some kind of initialization stuffs and all those things. And that is where TypeScript comes in. It helps you detect those errors in the runtime when you're developing the application, and avoids them shipping to the production. So that is something which TypeScript is really good at. And other than that, I also like the concept of TypeScript generics. So again, TypeScript is basically good when you are building a big scalable application. When you are building something for a hackathon, or when you are in a hurry and you are new to TypeScript, then I will definitely recommend going with JavaScript. Because again, learning TypeScript is a little bit, I won't say very tricky, but it is having some curve. But once you start using TypeScript, I would say 1 to 2 times in a good project, then I'm definitely sure you're not going back to JavaScript. So this one, I have the repo for both JavaScript and TypeScript. So even if we can walk with JavaScript, but in case if the people want to understand how this will be implemented in TypeScript, they can of course go to the other repository. I'll be sharing these links anyway, so they can just walk through that and go and see and check the code base how it is implemented in TypeScript also. So finally, coming to what we will learn today. So basically, what is Next.js and why is it called a full stack framework? Like, see, if you build an application, you will have a front end, which is basically client serving, and which will be consumed by the end users. Like, let's say you make an application, you don't want to, let users make API calls and get stuck in that complex things. Like, they are just not, let's say some non-technical person comes in, they would like to see, okay, this is a table, I can see the value, I can put in the form input and so on. So that is what front end is about. It is the user facing app side of your application. And that is generally built in using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, of course. Now, if you see, there are frameworks, there are multiple front-end frameworks like React, you have Angular, you have Vue, and so on. These are designed to make your front-end experience pretty easily. They provide some out-of-the-box solutions that makes things very straightforward for you. But when it comes to backend, there are different frameworks. Like you can, depending upon, there are some modern languages like Golang, Scala, and then you have some older languages like this PHP, Ruby, and all. PHP also can be said as one of the full stack frameworks because it also lets you use templating language to actually build HTML and render it at server side. So yeah, I mean there are different frameworks, but what a full stack framework is, which basically lets you develop the front end and the back end within the same code base. Okay, and this is what Next.js is about. It helps you develop the front end and the back end in the single code base, and that is what makes your development faster also. Like let's say you are coming in and you are developing, a project, especially in hackathon cases, you want to have one system. You don't want to run a server in some different port and then your front end in different port, and you may run into some coarse errors, and there can be different scenarios. I'm sure if you would have tried building into two different things, you would have come across these kind of errors. So those things come into the picture when you have two different frameworks for building a front end and back end. But Next.js, it lets you build all of this into a single framework, okay? And that is why it is called as a full stack framework. And we will see in a couple of minutes how it is doing that, okay? So that is, and yeah, we will be visiting other features of Next.js also in a theoretical manner, so that we get to know what else Next.js offers, which is, great actually as a web development thing. Now, the next thing is file-based routing. So let's say I visit google.com, www.google.com, and then I add a query parameter, okay, and I make a search, then I am redirected to a different path. Now, there are two ways to handle this redirection. One is, redirection or navigation, whatever you want to say. But yeah, there are two ways. One is to write the code that actually, based on whatever input you are getting in, it will give you a redirection parameter, and then it will take you to that page, and you have to programmatically write all that stuff. That is basically navigation. You have React router, you have different router mechanisms for that. But the other thing is file based routing. So why this is creative way, it actually saves you a lot of code. It makes your project more structured. So let's say if I am a Next.js developer, someone else is also Next.js developer. If I look into their folder-based, file structure, I could easily get, okay, this is how it is working, and this is what the folder structure is up to, okay? So that is what it allows you to do. And other than that also, you can actually use different URL parameters and all those stuff. Anyway, we will be seeing that. But yeah, it gives you a lot flexibility also. Again, it doesn't mean that React Router DOM or other technologies don't give you that flexibility, but you have to write those on your own based on whatever requirement you have. In case of Next.js, you don't have to worry about this. You just need to create a file in the pages folder, and accordingly it maps you to that route. And we will be seeing that anyway, okay? Then we will be using use router hook, which is basically just for navigation. You want to go to a page, you want to reload a page, you want to get back and all that. So similar to React router, but yeah, implementation wise also it is very similar. You have push function to send another navigation route into your call stack and all that kind of things. And then we will be looking into authentication part, which is JWT, JSON Web Token authentication. What exactly it is, why it is the most common way, and you will see it used at lot of places. Because it is very, very popular. So the way you can relate it to is, earlier what used to happen is we had this cookie, in the server we used to store the data, and we used to create cookies. So whenever a user logged in, we validated their data, stored it in the server, and then put all that data, and whenever the user sent request again, we used to validate that cookie and check in our database that if the user session is active or not. So this was kind of a big thing, because again you have to keep looking into the database, and let's say if you have 10,000 users per second, then you have to keep on looking, coming back and doing all those kind of things. So this was one of the approaches. It is still followed at lot many places, but then JWT came in. Now, what is creative about JWT is, again, we will be discussing this, but I'm giving you a high-level overview. So JWT lets your system have a private key, which basically signs a token. And this token can only be decrypted by your system, because that private key is required. And in that way, you can just validate on the go. You don't need to make a call to a database to validate if the user is valid or not. So it optimized a lot of things, and now it is being used at a lot of places. And we will be seeing how, we will be actually looking into how this JWT is actually working, okay? And then we will see how Firebase Cloud Firestore we can use for database purposes. It is a NoSQL database, but it gives you a lot of flexibility, while querying data, doing where clauses if you are coming from a SQL background. And the reason why you would like to use something like Firebase is that it gives you all-in-one solution. So, let's say you want to implement authentication, then you want to implement databases, then you want to implement WebSockets and all that. So it will make things, it will be one-stop solution, and you don't need to worry about connecting it from different places. Only one service account or an admin access would be enough to, manipulate all of that. So that is what we will be discussing, and let's see how much we can cover. So again, don't take it as a kind of lot of things. Basically, try to get out of as much as you can, and try to understand these concepts in details, okay? And yeah, in case if you get any doubts, let me know. So I'll just start, and let me know if you have any questions right now, or I'll just start with the first topic, which is again theoretical a little bit, but yeah, we'll just quickly visit and then we will keep on moving. So if you have any doubts, just ask in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just quickly move to the presentation. Mm, all right, I think we are good here. So let me go next. So Next.js as a full stack framework, as we discussed, it lets you put your backend and front end at one place, and it also allows you to basically there are some specific functionalities like get static props, get server side props, and these what they allow you to do is they let you inject some static data, which is get static props actually lets you inject some static data when your page loads. Similarly, get server side props, it is basically, let's say, if I take an example, let's say you are actually going to, browse a blog website with the blog ID, let's say blog.com and slash ID is one, okay? Now, when you go to this page, get static props, it will fetch that data even before the website is ready and keep it ready, handy for you. So next time when you visit it, it does not need to make an API call. It will store this page, and then it will give it will throw you right away. So since the blog data is not changing very frequently, so that is why I gave an example of blog data in the get static props. On the other hand, if you have get server side props, it helps you to fetch the data on demand. So let's say I have a chat application, I have a group chat, and a lot of people are chatting there, and I want to fetch that data on the real time. So I don't want to fetch it only once during the build time. Build time is basically the time when you are done building your website and you are ready to export it to the production. Okay, so when you use something like get static props, it actually does all that API calls or whatever is required at the build time, and it stores it as a static page. On the other hand, get server side props will run every single time a user visits your page, and you can of course specify the parameters. Let's say don't run every time, let's say run every 10 seconds, something like that. So all those kind of things, you can do these using Next.js. It lets you input get static props or get server side props depending upon your application requirement. So let's say you have a blog website, you want to optimize the content and you want to have faster load time so that you give a better experience to end users. In that case, get static props will make sense. It will let you create those blog items one by one, and then it will actually create a static page out of all those. Now if I give you a better example, let's say you have thousands of blogs. Now you don't want to generate 1,000 pages, right? You may not want to, because that will be a lot of data. So you don't want to generate all of them at a static point. You may want to generate, let's say you have some blogs which are very much read, I would say most popular blogs, something like that. Let's say there are 10 blogs which are very popular, and so more and more people are visiting that. Now you want to optimize the experience for those blocks. That also you can specify in this get static props, and you can specify these parameters. By the way, this whole get static props, it has a very good documentation. So that is why I'm not actually walking into the code, and I'm just giving you an overview what are the capabilities of the Next.js. So it is part of that. So you can always look into that, how get static props, what are the paths that you specify. And so the idea is you will get those 10 blocks, those 10 elements, whatever are coming in into your path. You can actually take, okay, I want the optimized experience for these blocks, load time should be this, and you can specify that in get static props, and it will be consumed by Next.js at build time, and then it will generate that. So in that way, you will prevent it from generating a lot of pages, that is 10,000s of blocks, and at the same time you will be also able to highlight those pages which matter to you more, and which you don't want to have more of a lag time. So that is what where you can make use of get static props to make optimize these things. Now, coming to get server side props, Get server side props, as I told you, it will be running at every single instance, and you can specify how much delay you want and all that thing. But yeah, I mean, when it is a dynamic website, when there is a lot of change every single time page loads, you want to change, let's say you want to show some clock, you have some e-commerce website where you are showing offers on current products. So, you want to show the offer, let's say today and tomorrow it is going to expire, or let's say if 10,000 purchases cross, it is going to expire. So in those cases, you would want to use something like get server side props. So the idea is to fetch the purchases. Let's say after 10,000 purchases, the offer is going to expire. So you are going to, on every page load, you are going to track and get the data of how many purchases happened. And once the purchase is above 10,000, you are no longer going to show the offer. So that is how you can use something like get server side props for these kind of use cases. Okay. Uh, Other than that, you have auto JavaScript bundle compression. So if you are coming from React, there is something called react.lazy, which lets you lazy load the pages on the go. Okay. So let's say if I am having a web page and then I want to load it, maybe there is some nested component which is not supposed to, load it as a JavaScript bundle at the first run. So in those cases, you want to load it lazily, and that is where React.lazy comes into the picture. Now, what Next.js does is it gives this to you out of the box. You don't have to write React.lazy, all those kind of things. As you segregate your pages, those would be loaded only when the routes are loaded. I mean, routes are reached by the users. Otherwise, they won't. They would be lazily packed, and only the bundles will show up when the route is loaded. So let's say I have blogs.com user profile. Okay, I am going to the route user profile. So the bundle that is associated with the user profile, only that will be loaded and nothing else. And now let's say I want to go to another route, which is blogs.com slash write a blog or write a new blog, whatever. So that particular blog will, when you go to that page, the bundle associated, whatever functionality you've written for that particular blog, that will be only loaded at that time. Okay, so that is what Next.js gives you out of the box. You don't need to configure it separately. It takes care whenever it builds the file, it will take care of that. Okay. Now SEO friendly. So this is one of the very important concepts in normal React application. You have this when you try to render it, it is basically a root element and it is an empty div. So whenever you try to inspect the page source, you will always see this as basically an empty element, just that div ID equal to root. But in Next.js, it will pre-render all the HTML details. Let's say I have a block title, I have block component. It will render it and it will accordingly prepare the pages. Now, what is the benefit of this? Let's say your Google search engine is, you want your blog to rank high in Google searches. So in those cases, you have to have metadata and all those content, pre-rendered. And of course, in React, you have these solutions, but you have to configure that. Next.js does this by default for you. So whenever you render a page and whenever you try to see the page source, you will be able to see, like how it is getting rendered and all that stuff. And you will be able to see every single element, like let's say you added a heading, you added a paragraph or whatever, that will be rendered in the page and accordingly it will be packed. So this helps in improving SEO performance because Google search crawlers, it will look into your website and then it will see that there is only one div, then it will rank it down. But when it comes to SEO friendliness, it is definitely you can use something like Next.js, or even you can use custom this custom server side rendering prop, which you can use in the React also to do all these kind of things. But again, and Next.js, because it does out of the box, so you don't need to worry about all those things. Okay, so that is also one of the great advantages of Next.js. And then Next APIs that is used for building the backend, and finally middleware and request interceptors that anyway we will be looking into. So this is like an overview of why Next.js is a full stack framework. Again, yeah, I mean, although in between, anytime you get any question, you can put it in the chat box. But even right now, if you have any questions, you can just bring it in, or otherwise, I will just move next. Okay. So do we have any questions? And yeah, please type it into the chat box because I mean, I'm just looking into that section as of now. So all right, I think then we are good. No questions till now. Okay, awesome. So yeah, now we will dive into the code. So let's start with file-based routing. And the file-based routing, you have this thing, file name will represent that particular route. Index basically represents the home route, and I'll just show you what that means right now. And then identifier, so you use square brackets for the identifiers. So basically, let me just use a pen maybe. Yeah, so if you see, if anything that you put inside a square bracket, that will be used as a slug identifier for that. And when you do triple dots, which is basically a spread operator in JavaScript, so anything that is coming after that route, it will all be taken as an array of slugs. Okay, so that is how. And if you see, these are the examples like pages, blog, and slug.js. So basically, whatever comes into the this route as a slug, that will be taken as, and then you can use it to map any kind of parameters or anything like that. And you can, it's not like you have to use it at the end. You can name a folder like this also, username, and then inside that username you have settings.js. So now anything that is varying in this particular place, which is username, that will be coming as slug parameter. And similarly, this third one. The third one I would very much recommend not to use, because as this basically means that anything that comes after that, that will fall through this route. And because it is an array of all these slugs, so it can be, I would say, not very much predictable, because you can break the entire, let's say you have post, then post id, then post comment, and so on. So you can break all of them using the square slugs instead of using spread operation, which is good. I won't say it is not good, but ideally, if you want to avoid errors, and let's say if you want to avoid any kind of debugging and all that stuff, then it is definitely better to use this kind of structure, which you see in the second case. Let's say you had something else after setting, so you can make one more route and then use again square brackets to put in that route. I mean, to put in that slug, and so on. Okay, so that is an important thing. But yeah, you will see that how this works also. So let's first let me just go to the code. Let me share my VS Code. Just give me a second. All right. Uh, so here we are. I hope my screen is visible. And yeah. Okay, thanks, Brian. All right. So coming to this Git repo, and let me just share this repo right away in case if some of you want to look at it right now. We can actually do that also. Uh, so just a second. So I have two links. One is for TypeScript and one is for JavaScript. So this one is TypeScript, and this one is JavaScript. And in case if you're not familiar with Git, I will also show you how you can, use Git to load these branches one by one. So I am in my terminal, and if you are in Mac or Linux, you can simply install Git. If you are in Windows, you can install Git, but Git Bash is preferred because it lets you use some of the Linux commands also. So after you do a Git clone of the repo that I've shared with you, you will be getting these kind of files. Okay, this will be the folder structure. So if I walk you through the folder structure, dot next is the folder where you see all the build files. You will see that there is some caching that is happening out of the box. There is server files that is going to the server. That will be your backend. And then there is some static files, all the static, assets like HTML, JavaScript bundles and everything. And then you have this manifest where you specify what all is supposed to be there, and like this. So you will see all the build files in this dot next. And then there is this Firebase. You will see
Hey Shabam, sorry to interrupt you. You're muted.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, that
Thank you.
thanks. Yeah, thanks. Actually, okay, yeah. Sorry. So I was saying, in case if you are not familiar with the GitHub, I'll just give you Git commands. I'll give you a reference. So once you clone the repository, you will land to the main branch. Okay. If you want to see the branches, you can always do this Git branch, and then you will be able to see all the branches that we are operating into. So we have file-based routing, we have file-based setup, we have JSON-web-tokens, and so on. So if you want to go to a specific branch, you can just use git checkout. Or what I prefer is switch. It has come into the new version, and currently I'm in the main branch. But let's say if I want to, let's say, let me see which branch. Let's say I want to switch to file-based routing, so I can just go like this, and then I'll be switching to file-based routing, and then there would be some pages that would be added here, I think in the file-based routing, and so on. So you can switch and play along, which branch you want to, and go back and so on. So that is the idea. Now talking about the folder structure, I was saying this dot next is basically the build folder, where you get all the build data. You see the server, you will get all the server files. There is some pre-caching that Next.js does on our behalf, so that the variables are not used again and again. And then we have some static files inside this. We have some chunks of JavaScript. We will be having HTML and all that. And I think this build is not complete, so that's why we are seeing it like this. Um, for the build command, it is basically yarn build, which you can see in the package JSON. So I hope you are familiar with the npm and Node ecosystem. So you can see that these are the script commands that we will be like. Dev is to launch the dev server. Then we have build command to build it. Start is to run the production server that is just built. And lint is for fixing any ESLint code. So let's say if lot of people are working into the same code repository, in that case, you want to have specific linting. You don't want to have semicolons. You want to follow double quotes instead of single quotes, and so on. So all those things that will be falling in here. Anyway, so you can see that some new files are being generated as the build is running. So all those files come into this. This is where you use to ship your app to production. Okay. um, Moving ahead, we have this pages folder. Now, this is where file-based routing comes into the picture, okay? And I will show you an example one by one. So here, whatever you create, let's say I just add a file. Let me name as, what do I say? Blog post, blog-post.js, okay? And then I'll be quickly creating a React functional class. So something like this. This is an extension that I'm using in VS Code. It is called React snippets. So whenever I type just RFC, it will put up the boilerplate for me, and it makes life much easier. You don't need to rewrite this again and again. So that is what. Now let's say I just add a div which calls this is blog post page. So if I do it like this, and let me just clear it up and run the dev server, and I think I need to share my whole screen, otherwise it will be difficult. So let me share it again, the entire screen. All right, yeah. So if I go and launch localhost 3000, so this is the localhost page, and if I just go back and try to, yeah. So you see in the pages folder, I have added a page named as blog dash post. If you go to your localhost and then go slash blog dash post, then very likely you are going to see this page. And let's say I do some changes, let's say new changes incoming, something like that, anything. So that all you can see in this page, okay? So this is what file-based routing is. If you were supposed to use React Router DOM, then in that case, it would have been a little bit tricky. You have to write an index file, and then you have to use route and do all that mapping. And I actually used to like it because again, it was also very flexible. But once you start with the file-based routing, it makes life much more easier. Okay, and that is why I prefer it more now, because again, you can have some syntax errors or a typo that could happen. But in file-based routing, whatever you write, and that will automatically be mapped to that folder. So that is one advantage. So Anyway, so let me just remove this because we don't need this file anymore. And then we have public folder where you can put all the assets like favicon, svg images and all that, and you can always reference to this folder by just putting slash. So let me just go to index and let me try to add an image tag, and let's say we have src equal to, if I'm not wrong, it is slash, and let's say favicon.i, yeah, I think this one. And then you should always add a alt tag because it helps in SEO improvements. So let's say it is about where you can specify what it is about. So this one is about let's say website favicon, something like that. And I'm not and yeah, of course, if you have enabled linting, Next.js will give you some useful informations. It is saying me that don't use image tag, instead use image that comes from Next.js. So let's say if I wanted to use image, I could just import it image from next image. Now what is the difference? Again, this is also one of the useful component of Next.js that lets you lazy load these websites. Okay, so you have to do it like this, and then you have to specify the layout. And I think these are the properties. Again, there is a very extensive documentation. So let's say if I don't know what exactly it is about, and you can also see that once I deleted that page, it is now showing me 404 pages not found. Let's say I don't know about next image, so I can just I can just Google it next image, and then you will get a extensive documentation about how it works and everything, what exactly you can see example, what is source, what is width, what is height, and then there is some optional props like how you are supposed to put in layout and all those things. Okay, so what essentially this does is it lazy loads the image. You don't have a lot of load when the website loads all of a sudden. On the other hand, image tag directly loads it, and that's why it is not very, I would say, optimized way, because you don't want to load everything at once. You want to load them lazily just for a better website performance. Okay, so let me specify the height, let's say 50, and similarly I'll specify the width also. So width, let's say 50 again. So if I save it, hopefully I should see this in the image, yeah, logo. So you can see that I did not do anything. I just need to refer it like this. Whatever after the forward slash comes in, that will be picked from public. Let's say I had a folder inside public, let's say blog images, and then inside that there was a blog image. So then I could have just done it like this: blog slash images slash that particular image. Okay. So that is one thing that I wanted to. I mean, yeah, that is something also you should know if you want to have some public assets. That is all put in here. Now, secrets is the file which I'll be using to actually facilitate Firebase, and I'll be showing you how you can do this as well. It is very straightforward. And in the styles, you can put in all the styles, which is basically global CSS and all that, whatever CSS styles. In this particular project, just to make things pretty quick, I am using Tailwind, but it is not like you can use normal CSS also. So you can just add a simple CSS class, let's say example, and then you can specify, let's say displays flex, and then justify item center and so on, whatever properties you want, justify content center and so on, then you can use this example class wherever you want to. But again, I don't prefer it because it takes a lot of time, and in the CSS you don't have to import the CSS files. Like let's say if I had these you see index.js, I can just directly write the class name. Here it is not, but let me just see if I have an example where I'm using this. So okay, this is the main folder, that is why it is not here. So let me just add a class right away. So in index.js, here it is. Let me add, okay, we have this title. So I just need to do it like this: class name and then CSS classes. Let's say I want to change the color of the text to blue, and then let's say 600. These are Tailwind utility classes that comes out of the box. Here I don't need to import any CSS file. I can just directly refer to these class names and it will immediately change it. So that is why I prefer it this way. And then let's say you added a big bulky utility class here, then you can just copy paste it and replicate it everywhere else. And we will see these examples also. So anyway, so this was about the code structure and the repository, how it looks, the Next.js. Even if you don't clone from here and you create a next app, there is a command to create it is basically if you are using yarn or next, I mean npm, anything is fine. It is just create and then next app. If you do it like this, you will get a folder structure which is very similar to this, and whatever you put in pages, that will be serving as route, which is basically the file based routing. So that is the idea of this thing. So let me just quickly kill my server and go to the branch which is file based routing, so that we can see that. So git switch file based, and before that I need to check either commit these changes or checkout. So here I will prefer checkout because I don't want to save these changes. So hopefully now everything should be good. So now I want to switch to file based routing branch, and in case if you forgot, you can always use git branch to see what all branches it's having. So now I am in the file based branch. So here you will see that this is username, and inside that there is a settings file. Now in settings file, you will see like, okay, this all that is coming in, and then we have this blog where we have slug page and everything. And I think, let me just close all editors because it seems like the new changes have not been reflected. So let me just quickly again do the switch. File based routing. Okay, it says we are here. So let me just reload the window once, because ideally there should be some different configurations showing up here. Mm, wait, let me just see all the branches again. Uh, Firebase setup, next API is main. Okay, blog, and then we have config. Okay, for some reason it's not showing those changes. Let me try to switch to, maybe I did not commit that, or maybe mistakenly committed to some other branch. So let me switch to Firebase setup, maybe that would be the most latest one. Okay, now these changes I can see. So let me walk you through each of these. So here I have username, and let's just remove it for now. Let's try to write it for this one use case, and then we will see. So what ideally it is supposed to do is, when I go to a page which looks something like this, which is let's say some username, which will be a slug, and then settings. Whenever I go to this page, then I should be able to extract this particular content and accordingly render this page. So that is the idea. So for that, what I will do is, I will use okay, I think this is because this is a part of file based routing, and that is why it was not shown here. So let me just quickly switch back to the file based routing branch. And I think because that's why I was getting confused. So let me clear this up and git switch file. And I hope this commands are clear, because again, it is just to switch between branches to make it more convenient. And now if I come here and let's just remove everything else, whatever it was here, I think maybe I need to close it. Yeah. So you can see here the folder structure, it is username and settings. So if I do a yarn dev, and if I go to my local server and let me just, let's say a username ABC, and then go to settings. So it will, load that page, which is settings page. Right now, we are not doing anything with the URL parameters, because we will be seeing it in the use router hook. But yeah, this ABC can be anything, any slug parameter that you want to have, and it will, accordingly render this page. Similarly, if I go to the blog and then blog slug, which is basically at the end instead of in between, so I will have, like, let's say blog and let's say first blog or whatever. It can be anything, doesn't matter. Let's say first blog and then something like this. Then it will, render this slug page and so on. So accordingly, this will happen. And finally, this triple spread operator, which I said that you should avoid at all costs. But if it is required, then you can use this also. So in this one, what will happen is I will go to config page, and after config, no matter how many parameters I specify, let's say username, and then let's say what do I say, age, and then let's say boolean, something, anything, all these parameters, it will fall back to this config page, and then we can consume these parameters as well, that we will be looking anyway. Okay, so this is one of the these are the three things that you can do with the file based routing, and this pretty much covers like every single thing that you want to achieve with routing and everything. Okay, so let me just quickly check if we have any questions. All right, I think we are good. So yeah, please feel free to drop any questions if you get confused anywhere. I will be accordingly, addressing them. So this was like, how you can create files which will be auto served when you are landing to specific pages. Okay. Now, if I quickly move to, this particular thing, which is this one, um, the use router hook. It is again part of the file-based routing, but here we actually extract those parameters. Like, this is basically responsible for navigation and, of course, manipulating with the query parameters and everything. So we have some of the most commonly used features like router.push, router.query, replace, reload back. And I think these are self-explanatory, but yeah, we will be looking into these examples also. So and these allow you to, implement all those functionalities like how to navigate through different routes, what is the use case and everything. So if I just kill my server back again and let me switch to use router hook, I believe. And now if I, yeah, so here you will see some new things and let's visit them one by one. So let's go to the settings and let's remove this for a minute and so for using this, you need to import this use router from next slash router, I believe. And once you import this, and then you can use this const router. So this is a hook, which is again functional hooks. I hope you are familiar with it. But in case you are not, whenever you cannot use these hooks out of the functional components, which is something that is like, let's say I had a method, a function method. Let's say get API response. Um, which is basically getting API response and doing nothing. I mean, it's not a functional component, JSX element, whatever. So in this case, if I use a router, let's see what happens. So you can see this is complaining that use router is called in, which is neither a React function component nor a custom React hook function. And that is why it is, what do I say? It is restricted because it's a hook. That is why it's supposed to always be consumed inside a functional component. Now let's collect the query parameters. Here we want the username because that is how we have referred it in the file. So that is how we will be able to refer it here also. So you can see that GitHub Copilot is giving me suggestion that it is supposed to be something like this. Or if you are not familiar with destructuring of JavaScript, you can just use it like this also. So username equal to router.query. This is basically all the query parameters that will be coming in this router, and then you can use this username. Okay, so like this, and then if you see, this is something. So if this was earlier also, I think the import statement was not there. That might have thrown us some error. But if I go back to this, and let's say if I have this, let's say username is ABC, and then if I go to and do it like this, settings. So it says query is not defined. Why? Okay, it is not query.username anymore. It is only username because we are using const username. So let me do it. Yeah, and now if you see, it is basically username ABC. If I change it something else, like let's say if something like this, it is like that. Okay. Now you might be thinking when this is useful. Let's say you have n number of users and you want to see their setting configuration. So you have a backend API which addresses it. So let's say if I show you a quick example, const settings equal to let's say we have an object user1 and let's say dark mode to true. So user1 is browsing in dark mode and user2 is browsing in light mode. Okay, so dark mode is false. So let's do it like this. And let's say based on username you want to show these settings. So then you can actually make a query, like you can make a API call, because if it is in backend you have to make a use effect, and inside that use effect whenever the username is defined, because this would load at a certain time, it won't be immediate, so you have to check if username is defined. Then you can actually make a fetch request to the backend to get the user one and accordingly display the details like that. Okay, and since we don't have a backend here, so if I give you a simple example, so we can make it like const config equal to settings of username. And in case if it is not defined, let's say if username is ABC, which is not neither present here, so in that case we want to have a fallback, so we will use this question mark operation, double question mark, which basically means if this particular value is undefined, then use the thing that I write next to it. So let's say dark mode, and let's have it as unknown. Okay, And of course, I need to put in string because it is not a JavaScript data type. And then I can use config here, okay? So username mode is something like this. And if I go it like this and go here, and it says that objects are not valid if you meant to render. Okay, okay, it is not just config, it is config dot dark mode. Actually, like this, because we are trying to render an object, which is what JavaScript, Next is complaining for us. So you can see when I'm having this username, it is saying unknown. But let's say I do user one and go there. Now you will see that it is okay. It is true value. So I have to let's make these strings also so that it is properly visible. So now you can see it is true, and if I do user2, it is false. So like that, you can do all these kind of manipulations, to make use of this use effect hook and all that. Okay, so that is how you will be trying to use router parameters. Now moving to the blog page, again, I think blog is very much similar, so we won't have much changes here. Yeah, you can see that we are just using slug because here we have named it as slug, so we will be extracting slug from the query. And similarly for config, now config is a different case. So let's see how config is working. Okay, so let me go to the config page. So let me just go config, and let's say just have ABC. If we have ABC, it will show me like this. Let's say we have multiple routes, let's say SD or whatever, some random keyword type, I'll type it. Now you will see that it is coming as like this. Actually, it is coming as a string of, array of strings, but because I'm doing this join operation here, so it is appearing like this. If I show you how exactly it is showing up, let me just, do values equal to router dot query, and the name is all config. So I will use all config, and then if I do console log values equal to values. Okay, so if I just open my log console, and then if you see, it is an array of 4 elements. So again, because it is an array, so you might, maybe if you have email here, you might try to tap into this value to get the email, and that is why it becomes a little bit ambiguous. And even the someone who is reading your code, unless you don't specify it with comments that okay, first element is referring to this, second element is referring to that, and so on, it will be, kind of a, I would say, not a very good code in terms of scalability. Because let's say tomorrow you have some differences, and then you want to implement something else, or you want to change the order and so on, then it would be quite tricky. But here in this case config, let's say if I had similar files, let's say if I had something like if I wanted to break it further, I could have username, and inside that username folder, then I could have another file, let's say email.psx, and then so on. I could actually follow this hierarchy. The folder nesting will increase, but it will make your code more readable and more predictable also. This may lead to some unpredictable results. Okay, so this is about the use router thing, and I hope you got an idea. You don't need to grasp everything because this code is always there for your reference, but try to understand the concepts as much as you can. Okay, so that when you look into this, it becomes crystal clear to you. So I think we still don't have any questions. All right, okay. And yeah, please let me know if you want me to repeat anything. I just want that, you are very clear with the concepts. If you are looking at this code, you should understand this code at least. That is what my expectation is. If you see here, you see these question mark and all these are JavaScript operators. So let's say if the query is not defined, and if I'm trying to, get this all config, I will get an error that it is undefined. And in those cases, when you use a question mark, it basically means that if the value is defined, get the value, otherwise don't get it. And this will work on arrays also. This is a kind of a confusing syntax if you are coming from a different programming language, but this is how it is in the JavaScript, and it actually works really well because you don't have to. Before this, I think this was introduced in ES6, but before this, you had to check it like this: if router.query, if that exists, and then you have to move, let's say, router.query.allconfig, and if that also exists, then you have to move into something else inside that. So let's say first element, something like that. So this is something that was very complicated. You can see that it is taking a lot of lines. But in this case, if I follow question mark operation, I can just do it like this: if router.query exists, which is question mark, and if then all config, again here also I can use question mark dot to check if the first element exists or not. So that is the concept behind these question marks. I think the rest all I think is very straightforward, basic JavaScript only. So yeah. So this is something that I just wanted to highlight because I just realized that this is something you might not be familiar with. But other than that, I think you understood this concept that how we are extracting query parameters, okay? All right, so let's move on to the next one. So we have use router hook. We have these methods: push, query, replace, reload, back, and so on. So these all methods, this will help us to navigate through the router. And I've added this navigation folder in the example. So we can see this navigation, random page, index, and all that. So let me just go to my web page and go to the route navigation. And I think I actually added it in the index also. Let me see if it is there. Yeah, so I've created 3 buttons. Again, I've used Tailwind. So you can see that this button styling, if I just go to index, yeah, so you can see that I'm using the same styles everywhere. So let's say if I wanted to add another button, if it was a CSS class, then of course I could have used class name classes dot. But let's say if I want to add the same button into, then I have to, first thing is that I have to import the CSS file. That is one thing. The other thing is that let's say I want to do the same thing into some other file. Now here also I can just copy paste it like this, and that's it. I don't need to make any changes. Of course I need to remove this on click because that this on click was defined in that particular function. So I have to remove this, but the styling and everything remains intact. So you don't have to, do all those things. And let's say you don't even want to copy paste it everywhere. You can just copy this string and create a utility file. Let's say at the exterior directory, I create something like util classes, something like this. Although you can do the same configuration in Tailwind also, but let's say you are not very much familiar with how Tailwind is working. So you can create util classes, then utils.ts, and then you can export const all util tailwind classes, something like that, tailwind classes. And then let's say button class, you can create a key button class and then assign this value. And then you can, refer to this one. So if I go here and let's say I remove this and I have to use braces because it's a JavaScript object. So what was the name? All util. And again, you need to import this, but because I'm using VS Code, so it will auto import based on the suggestion and then button class. So if I do it like this also, this is again valid. So now I can, refer it at single places. The only reason to use something like this would be, let's say tomorrow you want to make a button change. Let's say you want background to be gray. So you have to go to every single place and make it gray, which is, kind of a big job. Although VS Code lets you search it here, so you can just search like class name. Actually, you can search this whole string, not just this. You can just use this control and then copy this here. And if I go here and search, you will see all the occurrences, and then you can replace it with whatever you want to. So that is one way. But again, let's say you are not using VS Code, you are just using some old Vim or Nano editor. In that case, if you have it all in a utility class, then you reference it everywhere. And whenever you want to make change, you can just make it gray here and it will reflect everywhere. So these, in those cases, it is useful to have something like this. But again, since we are not actually interested into this, so let me just delete it. This was just for the overview. So let me just undo any changes that I made here. And coming back to the index.tsx. So here you can see that I have functions like go to blog, which pushes me to the blog, first blog page. Then I have go to config, go to navigation, which pushes me to these routes, okay? So now here we will be seeing navigation. So I'll click on this and it will redirect me to the navigation page. Now if I walk you through the navigation code, so index.jsx, so what I've done is inside navigation, I've created 2 files. One is a slug file just to identify slugs, and the other one is index.jsx. Now index.jsx is basically, it will always load the home route. So since I have nothing after this, like let's say ABC, nothing like this. So that is why index.jsx is rendered. Similarly, if I show you, if I go to localhost 3000, you will see this page is rendered, which is basically index of the pages folder. So if I just minimize this folder, you can see that inside the pages, I have this file called index.jsx, which is responsible for rendering that page. Okay, so that is the role of index page. So if I go here and let's say I specify a route, let's say some VDFDT. So let's go to this navigation pages. Here you will see that router.push, and whatever the parameter that I'm extracting, I'm using router, and then use router to basically make a push and extracting this parameter from this input text. So I'm using this value, and on change, every time it changes, set the random page. Again, this is something specific to React. It is basically use state hook, which is used to mutate the values of the state. So let's say random page I want to trigger and change every single time someone types into the input field, and then it saves it into this random page. So that is what this particular input box is doing. And then placeholder, what is go to the specific route. Class name, again I have just added a border. This is again a tailwind class. Let's say I want to add a border red, let's say 500. And if I save it, so you can see that it is having the red border now. So the other thing that you see, the black thing, this is basically the outline, and we can actually, let's say on focus, we can change. I think it is, let me first check if it is outline. So we can just do outline none. These are all tailwind utility classes. You can, so you can see now that outline is gone away. So if you are actually, confused how these works, this is also tailwind documentation. You can find all these utility classes, which is very useful to, quickly build up the UIs. So let's say, not this website, let me see. Let's say border, I'll just use like this. I think that would be easier to search. Yeah. So here you can quickly search. Let's say I want to implement background. So background, I will search. You can see background position and all that. Let's say I want to have a background color maybe. So let me search. Yeah, here I go. So you can see BG inherit, BG slate gray, and so on. So you have all these things, as a utility class. Instead of creating a class in CSS and then importing that CSS file and then assigning the class, you can just use these texts, and Tailwind takes care of rest of the things. So here I have defined outline to none, so it is remove the outline. Now on click of button, I am triggering a on click handler, which basically checks if the random page dot length is greater than 0. Because let's say if I don't have anything here, then it won't make any sense to go to a specific page, or go basically these are two functionalities. I will talk about it, but the idea is it does not make sense to go to an empty route. It will basically be something like this: navigation slash and then this, which is basically navigation only. So that is why it does not make sense. So I'm just checking if the length is greater than 0, then only and then router dot push to this particular page. So let's say I input something like BS whatever, and then go to specific route, then it will go to that route. And now then in this particular route, this is rendered by this random page JSX. Okay, so here you will see that the page title that we are taking in is basically again using that same query parameter that I was talking about. And then here also we have two functionalities: router.back, router.reload. Reload will basically refresh the page, and router.back will take me to the page back. Okay, and if I show you the difference between router.back and router.replace, so here I went to navigation. Now if I click on the URL parameters and go to specific route, it will push into the stack. So the stack meaning it will be first the localhost 3000, then navigation, and then the page that I'm going right now. But if I go to replace, it will just replace with the current. So if I click on replace, it has come and it has replaced the call stack history of the entire thing. So now it is basically the localhost 3000 and directly this page. So if I click on go back, I will be redirected to the actual localhost 3000. But if I do the same thing with the go to specific route, then if I click go back, I am coming to this page, and let's say here one more button was there, go back, then I would have gone to localhost 3000. So this is the difference between replace and back, nothing specific. And of course you can whenever you are pushing to router, let's say if I go here, you can actually provide query parameters also. Let's say you want to have some query parameters. So we can do it like this: path name is this, and then I think we can have query, and in query we can provide, let's say, email equal to abc@gmail.com, something like this. So then in that case you will be, let's say if I go, let me try it out. So you can see that it is, adding query parameters here also. This is useful in some specific cases when you want to, do these kind of redirection and stuff. And let me, okay, wait, what happened? Let me just quickly go back and let me see. Okay, we have 30 minutes left. So let me just undo these changes also. So yeah, these are functionalities about use router hook, how we use different things to navigate, and this is totally this you can use alone to handle any kind of navigation that is happening around your website. Okay, so let me quickly see if we have a question. Would you recommend VS Code to beginner? Yeah, I would definitely recommend VS Code because you can actually use lot of extensions to make your life much easier. You can use, I'm not sure if you have access to GitHub Copilot, which actually gives you a lot of useful recommendations while building websites. But even if you don't, there are other extensions like Tab9, and you will have some code snippets like the way I showed you. I did not write the boilerplate. Like let's say, if I just quickly go and let's say I create a page here, uh, example.js. Is it existing already? Okay, it is not. Now, the way I would see is as a beginner, if I don't know anything about React, I will go to their official documentation. I will copy paste whatever it is having there and then modify the code accordingly. Other way is that if you have this, I think it is called code snippets. Let me just search React code snippets. Sorry, it is an extension, not React code snippets. Yeah, I think this one. So you can see that, here you will see some examples of, okay, they don't have example, TypeScript, React code snippets. I think not that ES7 one, this one. So here we have, you just type in and then it will create the boilerplate automatically. So these things are actually useful when you are starting newly. And here, if I do RFC and then, it creates me that boilerplate. And other than this, also you will get a lot of like inbuilt terminal and doing all those customizations that you need. You have a lot of shortcut keys to, make things faster and productive. So that is one reason also you should use VS Code. There are other editors also like Java. If you are doing Java development, you should use IntelliJ because the support for Java ecosystem is really good. Java in the sense not just Java, but JVM languages like Java, Scala, Kotlin, and all that. In those cases, I found IntelliJ to be pretty ahead of VS Code. But if you are into other things like Golang or JavaScript or TypeScript or any other thing apart from Java development, JVM languages basically, then VS Code is the go-to choice. I tried to use Atom, but again, I feel that VS Code is doing pretty great there. So of course, definitely go with VS Code if you're a beginner. All right, so let me move next. So now coming to quickly to the APIs, we create the APIs into the pages/API folder. So this is a specific route. You cannot create a page like API.tsx because here you will only hold backend app APIs. So we saw all these things in the front end. Now how we are going to manage our server, and that is what this backend is about. So let me quickly clear this out and then switch to next APIs. And I think I have changes, so I need to check out. Yeah. All right. So if I go to the API folders, you will see that there is one API that will be already created for you as a boilerplate. So here you can see handler is there, and handler is basically a function which takes two arguments, request and response, and then whatever you return response dot status, which is the status code, and the JSON. It is similar to Node. If you are familiar with Node backend, then it is very simple. But in case if you are not aware of Node, so what we do is whenever you send a request to any server, you send it a HTTP request. It can be any other request also, like a blob or anything. But here, to make simple applications, HTTP and REST API would be enough. So you send the HTTP request to an endpoint, and then you get, parse it into JSON object, and then you get a response. So if you see handler, it is taking request, and let's say you wanted to do some request manipulation. So you can do like, let's say you want to get the headers of the request. So you can do header equal to request dot headers. And again, if this was in the TypeScript, you would have got a lot of, if I just hover over here, it won't give me any details about this. But if I show you the same file for the TypeScript, you will see that TypeScript actually gives you a lot more details and you can actually read through those. But again, TypeScript is not something for beginners. If you are not familiar with JavaScript, then TypeScript is not a go-to option. So if I go to, what was it, hello. Yeah, so here you can see there are some more things moving around, but let's say I wanted to access headers here. So headers equal to request dot headers, and if I hover over here, then it will try to actually give me the information like what exactly it expects, what is inside the headers, and it gives me in within the what do I say, in code documentation. So you can see that what all authorization, age, and all these things are expected in the headers that you can extract from it. So that is why TypeScript gives you even more of a documentation, and it also helps you to document your code. It is basically code and documentation at the same place. It also helps me specify what type of response I'm returning. Like here I'm returning a name which is a string. So in this case name and this and so on. And this actually helps you prevent a lot of runtime error. I mean build time production errors also. But anyways, coming back. So here we have handler, and then we are returning the response with the status code 200 and with the JSON of this type. Okay. And if I show you, let me again spin up the dev server. And I've also created this HTTP file where you can refer it to. If you are familiar with using Postman, any HTTP client would be good enough. So you can go to request and hello.http. So I just wrote this get HTTP, and if I show the same example in Postman, and in fact you don't need Postman. If you are in VS Code, you can just search for a similar extension which is called Thunder Client, which is totally similar to Postman, this one. And if you install it, it will appear at your right navigation, left navigation. And here you can see I have this new request. So I can just this let me just go to that. What was the file name? Hello.http. Yeah. If I just copy paste this link and go to this Thunder client, I actually did not use Thunder client in this case is because I wanted to share this request so that you could see how the request is happening in case if you want to use it as a reference. Otherwise, Thunder client is much better than a normal request. Basically, for this to work, you have to install another extension, which is REST client VS Code, something like this. Yeah, this one, the second one only. If you install this, then you will automatically get these kind of files where I'm not sure why it just disappears. Yeah, you will get this kind of send request, and then you can send it like this. And here it is totally Postman kind of interface. So this looks more familiar, like how to add headers, body, and all. So the chances of getting error in this case is lesser. So always prefer to use, if you are using for personal use, this one. Otherwise, you can always use this also. This also works the same way. So if I send a get request, you can see that I'm getting a JSON response with name as this. So yeah, I mean, this is your backend. It has nothing to do with front end, and it is not using any front end. I mean, anything that you write here. Let's say I have hello.js. Let's say I use some constant which is let's say secret, which is some super secret key, something like that. Um, yeah, something like that. So this won't ever be exposed to front end unless you are returning it in the response. Let's say secret key. If you are doing it like this, of course, then it is going to get back as a response. But other than that, it never gets exposed. And you can write multiple APIs here also. And this also follows file-based routing. So let's say I have get user details. So let me make a file get user.js, and let me just copy this particular code and remove this one. And yeah, so if I do it like this and save it, like let's say instead of name I will do this response from get user. So if I do it like this, and let's say if I go to HTTP and create one more method, which is get user dot HTTP, and if I go to hello and just copy paste, let me see how much time do we have. Okay, we have 15 minutes left. So let me make it real quick. So API and get user. Okay. So if I send request like this, and I think I'm getting some error. Let me see why. Let me just quickly check. Get user and then handler. It seems okay. I think because of this cookie interceptor, I may not need this, and it is get user. So let me go back here. API localhost. I think, yeah, now it is showing. So cookie interceptor is basically a request interceptor which search for it actually sees what is the request headers, and you can intercept the request. Let's say you have multiple endpoints like this API, and then you have an auth folder. Let's say here you have an auth file like this, and here you have, let's say, verify email, which is basically protected endpoints. So you don't want them to be open. In those cases, you want to intercept a request and get the valuable data out of it, okay, and then make any API calls. So in that case, you can use something like this, which is an interceptor, to intercept the request. And you will see you will see more of these examples. So let me just go to git branch and git checkout. First, I don't want to save any of these changes. And git switch JSON web token. Here I have shown, a proper auth interceptor. So here what it does is it looks for a bearer token, and if it is a valid token, then only it lets you use that. Okay, and I'll talk about this. Let me see. Okay, we have less time, so let me just cover this JSON web token so that you get a proper understanding. But before that, let me see if we have any more of a general question: is TypeScript or JavaScript more applicable? TypeScript is definitely more. See, TypeScript is not a language. It's basically a compiler, which the end code is going to be JavaScript only. TypeScript is a what do I say? As a cover, which helps you write the code. And once you are happy with your code, then when you build it, it will be translated to JavaScript only. So TypeScript is not a different language. It is just a superset of JavaScript. But browsers don't understand TypeScript, so they all get transpiled and compiled back to JavaScript. And once that is done, then you get it. And if I tell you how most of the real world applications are built, they are always built in TypeScript. Like there used to be a code that whatever can be written in JavaScript will eventually be written in JavaScript, because JavaScript is like nearly perfect language. It is very beginner friendly. It is like Python only, and there's a lot of things. But then TypeScript came in, and now I would say that TypeScript is the perfect language because it lets you do so many things. So yeah, I mean, everything is now written in TypeScript, the big scalable applications. But let's say if you are making a small project, definitely go with JavaScript and get started in that. Um, if for career purposes, it is see, you should start with JavaScript, because you don't want to handle type safety, generics, because that will be a lot to consume at once. So if you start with basics and then you go to more advanced stuff, then it will keep your interest in programming. I've seen people learning C++ at a very early age, and I was one of them. But what I found was that it actually takes off your interest, because there is so much to absorb. At some point, you feel that it is too hard. But when you start with simple, you understand the concepts, and then you realize, okay, this is the application, and then it makes more sense, and then it keeps you going in the field also. And yeah, start with JavaScript, and once you get a good gist of JavaScript, make sure to move to TypeScript, because if you're building big applications, JavaScript won't be that good. So yeah, that's about it. Okay. Coming to the JSON Web Tokens, I think we had a discussion, but let me talk about that quickly. So there's a client which requests a token from the server with the help of username and password, or it can be anything, any authorization token. And then server signs a token using its own private key, which only it has. So no one else can know what exactly it is. So it signs this token and encrypts it into a data which cannot be decrypted by outside world. Now it returns this gibberish string, which is a JSON web token. And then whenever you make a request, let's say user profile, then you send this JSON web token. Server decrypts that and verifies, okay, this is the required token and it is valid because I have signed it. It decrypts it using the same secret key that only server contains. And if it is valid, then it allows user to access the data. That is, the very high level definition of JWT. Now, if I show you here, let me go to the login.js, which is again an API endpoint. So here I'm using this library called JSON Web Token. For this, you have to do either npm install JSON Web Token or yarn add JSON Web Token, whatever you prefer. Once I get request headers dot authorization, I'm just checking if the authorization is existing and if it is having this basically these are the protocols. Like let's say if you want to have a basic authorization, you use basic, and then you use base64 encoded username and then colon password. Okay, so this is I would say industry standard. You can actually you don't need to fall into this. You can directly send the username and password as it is. Instead of one field, you can send it in the body also, but generally you send it in the authorization headers. So that is what it is about. And then I'm just checking if these does not exist, then I will return a response that authentication token is missing. But let's say if it exists, then I'm splitting it because there is a space and then the token exists after in the second part. So since the indexing starts at 0, so I'm taking the first element, and once I get it, I'm decoding because it is base64 encrypted. And by the way, this is nothing that I do, it is industry standard. This is how you send basic tokens. So you can read about basic authorizations. So you can just search for, like, let's say basic auth, and you will find a lot of basic auth. Mm, yeah, I mean, you can go for Wikipedia also, but NDN docs would be better. So you can see that how basic auth works. What is, you can see this gibberish string. Basically, this is a base 64 encoded string. So that is how the protocols happen. And it is no hard rule, but it is a standard way that people follow. Okay. So here I'm just decrypting that decoded token, what I get from the username and password. And then I'm splitting it because it is username colon password. And then I am creating, I am signing a JSON web token. Now I'm using this sign, and then I'm using a process.environment, because you should always put these in environment variables so that you don't accidentally push it to the GitHub, and you will see that this file is added into the git ignore. Because if you share your credentials in the GitHub, anyone can exploit it, and anyone can make use of it, especially when you are using some cloud services like Firebase, Google Cloud Platform, and so on. And we have 9 minutes left. Okay. So you should always put these secrets in the git ignore so that it never gets pushed to the GitHub. So here you can see that I've created some super secret key, which is just simple string. But yeah, here if you see, I'm signing it using that, and I'm using this double question just to, in case if it is not able to find this. So I'm just using a random string. It can be anything, but yeah, generally this won't happen because it is definitely going to able detect it from here, unless I have not done any typo. This super secret key must be matching with this super secret key. That is very important. Rest all will be straightforward. So once I sign this token, then I will return this token, and you can pack in any object. Like when you decode the token, you will get back this object. Okay. So I am returning this in the login. So if I quickly go here and again do a dev, and if I go to my login, yeah, so here you see I am doing this get HTTP localhost API login and authorization basic. And if you see, if you're not sure what this is, let's quickly go onto the web and try to decode this. So let me go and decode base 64 online. Something like this should work. So you will get a website, and then you can just paste it here. And by the way, this can also be done by JavaScript, encoding and decoding. Just to show you how it is working, I am putting it here. So if I click on decode, you can see that username, password, that is how it is coming. Let's say my username is Shivam, and the password is something else. Let's say ABCDEF, something like this. So I'll just copy paste it, and I think they don't have encode here. So let me just go back and instead use encode. So base 64 encode online. Yeah. So if I click on encode, I get something like this, and if I copy paste it here, and I'll just go here and paste it. So then I will send a request, and then it will return me the web token, which is a gibberish string. But this can only be decoded by the server who has, or anyone who has the access to private key. But since you are storing it in server, so no one can decode it unless they guess it somehow and get it. But yeah, otherwise no one can decode this, and then they will get this. Okay. So if I use it like this, and then I have an endpoint called validate. So in this one, let me just, this one is basically for the Firebase. But when you send, let me just show you. So here we have a validate token. So again, validate token, this will take that token that is there. And this auth interceptor, what it is again checking for bearer. If it exists, then it will, if it does not exist, then authenticated is false, otherwise it is true. Then it is verifying the credentials, how it is coming in, and then it is getting all the credentials, and then it is returning the response accordingly. Okay. And if you see here, verify token, basically verify, again there is a function like the way we sign it, jwt.sign, then similarly we have jwt.verify. Okay. So it verifies the token and accordingly returns the response. So if I go to validate token, sorry, not here, let me go here. I think this one, I'm not sure. This seems like this is a Firebase token, API validate token. Okay, let's try this out. Yeah, so you can see that I'm getting a verified payload. It is decrypting, and if I, let's say, even if I miss a single character anywhere, let's say if I do it like this, oops, let me just take, yeah. If I do it like this and send a request, then it will give me authenticated to false. So this is how your JSON web token works. And then the way Firebase, yeah. So this is like about the JSON web token. And of course, you can look into this. I'm just giving you an overview because we are running out of time. We have 5 minutes left. So I'll just quickly show you how it is happening, in the Firebase environment also, so that you get an idea, and then you can refer to this code. And I think we won't be able to cover the Firebase branch, but you can always look into the code. So let me switch to first checkout and git branch, git switch, Firebase setup. So here you can see that we have endpoint Firebase validate, which will validate on behalf of Firebase. And then there is something called login, which is logging in. Okay, this is I think not Firebase specific. Firebase login register user. I think yeah, here you can register a user. So yarn and dev, and you can actually see this login page also, Firebase login. So if I go to actually my go to my front end, this will be for your reference. So you can always Firebase login. You can always see how it is implemented. Yeah, you can add login and get token if it is a valid one. So it says that auth user not found. So because there is some error that's happening, of course. So that is one thing. But trying to understand from actual process how it is happening is, if there is no Firebase, then you will send a request. The JWT thing that I showed you, that is only required if you are not using something like a third-party service. There would be a backend server. There would be a super secret API key that you will be signing in. The client will send you email and password. It can be in basic token, it can be in body, anything you want to, whatever you are more familiar with. Then you will send it to the validating details. Basically, email should be a valid email. You want to do some regular expression checks and all that. And password should be strong enough, of course. And if that is valid, then you are going to store that, like let's say backend server database. Let's say if I added myself, so I will say let's say shivam@example.com as registered with the password, let's say something like this. Okay. Now this is stored. Now when it comes to logging in, again the client will send me email and password to get the JSON web token, which is the same email, which is shivam@example.com and the password. Then I will basically search for this, that if the user exists in my database with the name Shivam, and then check the password. If it is matching, then I will encrypt that data into a web token and return it back to the client. Now, any request that is authorized, that needs authentication, any request that is made from the client, it will not send me password and username again and again. It will just send me that JSON web token every single time, and I will only check by using that verify command that I just showed you. So let me, I think I had it here quickly. Login auth interceptor, I think. Yeah. So I will just verify, and if it is verified, then it will be good enough for them to access it. And then I can just cover this auth interceptor. So if I show you Firebase validate, or somewhere I was using this, let me just quickly search it. Auth interceptor. Yeah, so if you wrap it like this, then this handler would be a protected handler. This will only be authorized if the user has, passed in the authentication step. So that is how you, do if there is no Firebase. Now, what Firebase does is that it gives you out of the box these functionalities. Like you can log in through front-end client, send the username and password. Firebase server will verify. It will make a request to Firebase server. It will verify and give you the JSON web token directly there itself. Now you send this JSON web token to your backend, and backend server will keep on communicating with the Firebase and see if the token that you sent from the client is valid or not. And if it is valid, then backend server will let you perform all those operations. So this is like overall idea of JSON web tokens and how you can use it to make these API requests. And of course, just to close it, you can always refer to these files that I have created, which is register user, which is basically using Firebase credentials, and you can find how Firebase configuration is created. This again, if you are very confused, you can always refer to the documentations like Firebase admin SDK, which is basically for the backend, and Firebase web client, for the front end to read through it and see what exactly is required, how do we configure this and everything. You can get a good idea. And I'm always here also, so in case if you find any doubts or if you are planning to use something like Firebase, you can always ping me in Discord. So that is also one thing. But yeah, you can find these references, all of these into these file folders and everything. So I think that's all. I think we have to conclude it here. We missed out some of those, but I think you got a good idea and understanding of how things are working. So yeah, I mean, if you have any questions or anything, you can ask in the chat, or if you don't have anything, then I think we are good to wrap up. Any questions? Thank you, Christine. Mm, okay, so I think then we are good. Yeah, thanks, no problem. All right then. All the best, everyone, and I hope you all build something cool. And let me know any. You can ping me anytime in Discord. As soon as I see your messages, I will quickly respond to it. Even not just specific to this. Let's say you have something else in your mind, like WebSockets or anything related to tech stack. You can ping me, and I would love to help you out. And I think yeah, that's all. Sure, sure. Yeah, I hope you have all the GitHub repository and everything. And then I think we are good to conclude. Okay, then. Bye, guys. All the best again.